Hello, virtual English 2 students, and welcome. We are finally in our poetry unit. We are going to be reading the poetry of Langston Hughes, The Dreamkeeper and Other Poems, specifically the Walkers with the Dawn section of The Dreamkeeper and Other Poems, as you read yesterday in your introduction and personal note 321 activity. There are actually 66 poems in this edition that I have, but we're only going to read 14. 14 poems total that we're going to read from the Walkers with the Dawn section. As you can see, that is attached to this assignment. We're going to try for 2 a day. We're going to try to read 2 poems a day, so it should take us about 7 days to get through this. So yes, 2 poems a day as we go through this. Every day I'll pop on here and I will read the poem, and I won't necessarily like chisel mine the poem like I am going to do with the face-to-face students, but I'll kind of like point out some things that we talked about and some things that got brought up in our discussions as a class as a whole to help some of y'all kind of be able to think about these poems in a different light, because that's the point of poetry. The point of poetry is to get you to think, is to stretch your mind in a different direction, and that is what we're trying to do. Poetry is about ideas and thoughts, and exploring those ideas and thoughts in an interesting and unique way using your words. So 2 poems a day. I'll get on here and kind of talk about them. Now, here's what you're honestly here for. You want to know about this assignment called the one-pager. So you're going to need to do 7 one-pagers total. You have 14 poems, 7 one-pagers. That means you pick one. You don't have to do a one-pager over every single poem. You only have to do a one-pager over 7 of the 14. So you get to choose which 7 poems you do your one-pagers over. Now, with that said, we're going to try to shoot for 2 poems a day, 7 days, 7 one-pagers. Maybe try to do 1 of these a day to help you out. You can do all 7 of them at the very beginning here, honestly. You can do all of them and not wait for us to read the poems every single day if you really honestly want to. So I'll be explaining what the one-pagers are here in just a second. Then after we're done with this, we're going to do a theme project. This is going to be similar to the other 2 projects we did, which were the success project and the reflective final that you did project. It's just going to be focusing in on theme. We'll talk more about that in 2 weeks once we finished the reading of the poems. So one-pagers. What is a one-pager? Well, it's simply a list of criteria, which I will put up on the screen here in a second, but it's just a list of criteria that I want you to put on a single page. Now, we encourage creative flair, but if you're not a creative person, that's perfectly fine. As you'll see in my examples, stick figures will work for what we're looking for this particular activity. But I have 7 criteria and 2 optional criteria that I want you to put on one page. That's all it is. This idea was inspired by the NCTE. This is the article I read that kind of inspired it, where, as they mentioned, they have a list of criteria. This is not the same criteria I have for you, but basically you have students take this and they create their thoughts in one page. And so this is an example of what one would look like. Here's another example. Here's one that would be more kind of along the lines of what we are kind of doing. Same thing over here. Here's another example. And yeah, you're just including all this information on the page in just a one-page little format. I have actual examples to show you that we did in class yesterday to help you out. So, and just to give you another example, these are over literature. So these aren't for poetry, but these are students, one-pager students done in the past when we read Fahrenheit 451. And yeah, I had certain criteria I wanted them to include. They included that criteria, and they did a little bit of a creative flair when talking about it. So for your one-pagers, I'm wanting you to include the following things on your one page. So the following things need to be included on your one page. You need to first off write the title of the poem and the author's name. Now, you all have the same author's name for all of this, but the title of the poem is kind of key. I want you to include the author's name because you need to get used to referring to the author of pieces, especially by their last name. If we were reading a variety of different poems, it would become much more pertinent to include the author's name, but I do need the title. That way I know which poem you're talking about. Then we get into the actual criteria that I will be grading you on. The first piece of criteria is you're going to quote a quote, a phrase or line from the poem and explain what you believe it means. So here's the line or phrase from the poem. What do you think it means? And I'll show you an example of this. And basically you just pick a line, quote it, and then tell me what you think it means. Now, here's an example that you'll see here in a second. One poem that we did is Poem I Lost My Friend, which is at the end of a personal note that y'all read yesterday. And last in sixth hour, the students said, let's pick that line. So I lost my friend, and I asked them what to explain what it means. And they say he lost his friend, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the literalization. Like, you got to push it a little bit deeper. Like when it talks about him losing his friend, did he just lose it because they got into an argument? No, he died. So we ended up saying he lost his friend. This line means that his friend has passed away and is no longer with him, and he feels very sad, something along the lines of that. So that's the second criteria. So quote a line or a phrase or line from the poem and explain what you believe it means. Then you're going to draw an image from the poem and caption the imagery that inspired it. So you're going to draw an image and you're going to caption it with a line from the poem, essentially. It technically doesn't need to be a line. A line helps, but sometimes it can just be a couple words from the poem that helps highlight that. And it needs to be something that is significant. You can't just draw they say, like man. If you just pick man out, a random word man, and then draw a man, and the man isn't necessarily a pertinent, like an important part of the poem, that's not going to help you. I'd prefer a line on it, but it's up to you how you kind of present that. Then the next one is you're going to create a border using a key phrase from the poem. You're going to do that all a way around the frame of the paper. Then you're going to select a main idea. So what is an idea this poem explores, and relate it to your own life? So how do you relate to the idea that this poem's exploring? Then you're going to pick an important word from the poem and define it in your own words. It needs to be in your own words. I don't want you just to pick out a dictionary definition and throw it on there. Turning it into your own words requires you to use your brain a little bit more and make you think about it. And learning happens because thinking equals learning. You need to use that to learn. So that's why I want you to write it in your own words and not just copy it out of a dictionary. Then last but not least, you're going to quote a line or phrase from the poem and explain how you relate to it. This is similar to the main idea, but this is a specific line that you relate to. There are two optional ones. If you do the optional ones, they are additional points that will be added to your total. So these are additional points that will only help you. So if you write a poem and it's not a really good poem, that's fine. You'll get points. I won't guarantee you get all 2 points, but you'll at least get some additional points. Because I've had people write, roses are red, violets are blue. I like this poem. That was their poem, and I really don't feel like that's a 2-point poem, honestly. So, and that doesn't really, it showed that you were inspired by the poem. We're looking at explores a similar idea. Your poem explores a similar idea that the original poem explored, or uses the similar structure that poem used. And then if you do that, you get 2 points. And then you can use color to liven up your image. You get half a point if you do that. Now, I know what you're thinking. How am I supposed to do this if I am a virtual student? It's more difficult for me to get you papers. So here's the deal. There are 2 ways that you could possibly do this. The first one is to get out your handy dandy cell phone and just take a picture of it. Make sure it's a good picture. Make sure it's in focus and whatnot. That way I can read all the material that you have written on there. If you want to go the digital route and try to make an infographic per se, you could use a slideshow software and export the slideshow as an image. It basically just be a one slideshow essentially. You could do it in Google Slides, PowerPoint. I have a Mac, so I use Keynote, and that's actually how me and Mr. Norman's Stupid Podcast, the TDWG podcast, I make the album art for it, and I use that to make the album art. So you can do that. I know within Keynote, and I'm pretty positive PowerPoint, I don't know about slides, you can kind of rotate how the text is positioned and whatnot. So you can do that as well. Here are a couple of examples that we did in class yesterday up on the board. These are not poems from Walkers with the Dawn, so these do not count as one of the 7 one-pagers. So they need to be one-pagers from Walkers with the Dawn. are poems from Walkers with the Dawn. So we'll look at the first example of dreams. This is what I think this is my 5th hour class we came up with. Yes, this is the 5th hour class, what we came up with. So I wrote the title of the poem, the author's name. I quote a line from the poem and explain it. I draw an image. See my dope image here. So you don't have to be a super fancy artist to draw. And then I captioned it. Then I created a border using a keyword or phrase. Then I selected the main idea from the poem and related it to my own life, which is right here. I defined a word. I picked a word and defined it using my own words. And I quoted a line or phrase from the poem and explained how it relates to me. So that's how I did that. This is just an example of how to do it. It doesn't have to be super crazy fancy. If you want to do super crazy fancy, more power to you. Like, I love it when people put in a lot more effort into it and actually put forth their best effort. And I love to see the creativity that some of you kids have. If you do so, I might include it in my examples going forward. That's what that 5th hour did. Let's look at 6th hour. 6th hour did a different one. They did poem, I Love My Friend. So write the title of the poem and the author's name. That's what we did right here. Quote a line or phrase from the poem and explain what it means. That's what we did right here. We drew an image poem. As you can see, a stick figure will suffice. And that's supposed to be a tombstone. And I captioned it with, "He went away from me." So that was drawing an image from the poem and captioning it. You create a border using a keyword or phrase, or key line or phrase. That's what we did with "I Love My Friend." Select the main idea of the poem and explain how I relate to it, and quote a line from the poem and explain how you relate to it. There you go. You're just including all that information on one page. You can arrange it however you'd like. There's the word, by the way. I think I skipped over the word. There's one more that I'll show you, and all these will be on Classroom for you to look at as well. We'll go with the second one, this one right here. All right. This one we did dreams again because we were running out of time. First thing we need to do is we need to do the title of the poem and the author. There it is right there. Quote a line from the poem, explain what you believe it means. Hold fast to dreams. This line is showing us that if we hold on to dreams, they will take us to our goals. So explaining what it means, drawing an image from the poem, captioning it, border using a keyword or key line or phrase. That's what we did right here. If dreams die, if dreams die, if dreams die. Select the main idea from the poem, relate it to your own life. That's what we do right here. Life is meaningless without dreams. Then we did define an important word from the poem. Of course, we did dreams, and then quote a line from the poem and talk about how you relate to it. There you go. I didn't do any of the optional ones because they're optional. They will only help your grade if you do the optional portions of those. So that's all it is. So that is how to do a one-pager. Those are some examples of one-pagers. I look forward to seeing what y'all do with y'all's one-pagers. Once again, for virtual students or students that are in quarantine, you could either try to create a digital one. I don't know how well that will go. I recommend trying to use a PowerPoint-like presentation keynote, Google Slides type of software to help design that, unless you feel comfortable using Adobe Photoshop. If that's your forte, more power to you. Or you can just do it on a piece of paper, do it there, and then take a picture of it. Make sure that you can actually read the information on the picture, upload the picture to Classroom, and send it off to me. So if you have any questions, make sure you email me, pdavidson@porterville.mo.us. I look forward to seeing your poems, and I'll be back this afternoon probably explaining to you what we talked about in the first two poems that we read. All right. See you later. Bye.